Hello everyone, this is Dan with a new video. I wanted to discuss an issue that I've seen occasionally on my channel, but definitely on MGTOW channels and channels that have men talking about men's issues. And that is how you'll occasionally have a woman that comes onto the comment section on these channels. And I don't have a problem with women commenting on my videos and stuff like that. But occasionally you'll have a woman that says, I'm not this way. Remember, not all women are crazy. Not all women are feminists. They'll acknowledge the greater issues that are being discussed, at least in some way. But then they'll say that not all women are this way. Some women still respect men. Some women still want to just settle down with one man. Some women still want to have a partnership with a man where both parties benefit, and all that kind of thing. Now, the issue of NWALT in a greater context has been discussed a million times on all kinds of different channels. The idea that not all women are like that. But in particular, I wanted to focus on this idea that because not all women are feminists, some women are still good for long-term relationships, or some women are still kind of the exception to the rule. And the problem with this thinking is that the social contract between men and women has been destroyed. There effectively is no arrangement, there is no contract that exists in society that men should want to sign up for, regardless of whether you're like that or not, whether you're a feminist or not. And here's why. We used to have a system that was basically built on traditionalism, that said that the man had all of these obligations that he had to provide for a family, give his family security, but in return, he was basically the head of the household. The woman had to work with the man to raise their children together, to basically get stuff done and be successful as a family. And the woman had her obligations and duties as well, but the man had the obligation of providing for that family, along with the authority for being able to make decisions within that family, with the input of the woman, and with the idea of basically doing what they needed to do together to survive. The problem is that old system, whether you like that system or not, whether that's the system for you that you want to be the basis of a contract between men and women today, that old system is gone. And for men, it has been replaced by this idea that you still have to do everything that men have done in relationships and in families. You're still obligated to be a provider. You're still measured by how much money you are. You're still measured by success. You're still measured by all the things that men have been held to in the past. But women don't have to do anything for you whatsoever anymore. Women are obligated to respect you. The children that you give to women, they belong to her in the state. The woman can use the government to take those children away basically whenever she wants. You as a man are supposed to accept the idea that you have all these obligations and responsibilities still, but you have all the obligations and responsibilities that women used to have as well, and there are no benefits, and you're supposed to just agree to that. That's the contract that is offered to men in society. And the real issue is men who respect themselves and who have figured this out understand that there is no signing that contract. That's not a healthy situation to be in. And it doesn't matter whether you're supposedly a good woman or not, it makes no sense to sign that kind of agreement with anyone. So the problem is that effectively we no longer have a social contract between men and women. We have a social experiment. There is no reasonable terms to agree to. You can't, as a man, sign up for that and still have respect for yourself and know what you're doing and plan to have a good life, no matter what woman is involved in that picture. So individual women cannot change this by their own choices. Individual women can't make this social contract reappear somehow, whether it's traditionalism or some other form of men and women getting together again. Individual women, just like individual men, cannot change the overall situation between men and women in society. And that situation, again, is basically feminism and gynocentrism have become the prevailing cultural norms. They are the ideas that our society is built around now when it comes to relationships. No individual woman can just decide, well, I'm not crazy, so these rules don't apply to me. They do, just like they do for every individual man who, under different circumstances, might actually want to have a family or might actually be willing to be a provider or a protector in a relationship, in a marriage. It makes no sense for a man to choose that option because, again, the social contract is just completely destroyed. And so women don't have the option of being a part of that either, not really. Now, you can find a man who doesn't really understand this, and you can try to role play traditionalism with that man. And that's kind of another video topic, the idea of, well, we're just going to be traditional and have this kind of role-playing relationship even as in a society that is no longer traditional. That's a different topic for a different day. But the reality is that there is no making yourself an exception to the rule. The only relationships that red pill men can get into are relationships where those men set the standards themselves, where men basically say, okay, there is no social contract, really, between men and women today. All we have is a social experiment, and that's not something that is a viable choice for me. I don't want to be involved in some experiment where I'm just exploited and where I can just be basically cast out of a family and have everything that I've built taken away from me at any time. I'm not going to be a part of that. So if I'm going to engage in relationships with women at all, it's going to be on my terms. It's not going to be based on marriage. It's not going to be based on having children, because those things are part of the broken system. Those things cannot be had with any woman without putting yourself in such a negative position that it just makes no sense to do that. So it's either on that man's terms or not at all. And that's the dilemma that we face. And I've discussed this before, where we're basically at a stalemate in society as far as having any sort of new social contract between men and women. Women don't want to compromise. The vast majority of women out there, they want feminist ideas. They want gynocentric ideas at the very least, where they benefit and men have to do all the things that men have always done in marriages, but yet they can take advantage of the family law courts and kick the man out whenever. Again, that's not really a social contract that any rational thinking man would agree to, or that any rational thinking person on the raw end of that would agree to. So it makes no difference whether you see yourself as an individual exception. As long as this stalemate continues where women don't want to compromise, but men have no reason, there's no rationale for men to be part of this system, this isn't going to change. There's not going to be a new social contract between men and women as long as this stalemate basically continues. And individual men and individual women who may have good intentions and they may have wanted to build a life together, it makes no difference. They're the ones that have to basically make alternative decisions. As a man, I believe that the most rational decision is to go your own way. It is to understand that you just can't build this kind of life with a woman anymore, because there's too many dangers and literally none of the benefits go to you. It's supposedly all about pleasing the woman. For a woman, I don't know what to say about this. If you really are not a feminist and you really would respect a man and all that kind of stuff, if that is indeed the case for particular women, which I think it probably is, at least in some cases, you either have to find a man who basically doesn't respect himself or isn't aware of what's going on in society for men, and you have to find a man who will go along with marriage and having a family with you anyway, or you have to just accept that because things are the way they are and this social contract doesn't exist between men and women anymore, it's completely dysfunctional now, that it's going to be very difficult to have a long-term stable relationship with a man. Because as more men figure this out, the men that actually have value, the men that would actually be good providers and protectors, as they figure out that there's really nothing in it for them to do this anymore, they figure out that we live in a social experiment rather than there being an actual social contract between men and women now, more of these men are going to continue to walk away from these traditional or conventional expectations. So it doesn't really matter whether you're like the feminists. It doesn't really matter whether there are some women who are not crazy or not. At the end of the day, there's no social contract between men and women to get together anymore. And it makes no sense for men to see things as different just because you're a different quality of person. Maybe a man would still be willing to have a short-term relationship with you or date you or have a friendship with you. But that doesn't change the fact that for men who are aware of what's going on in society, there is no social contract between men and women anymore. There is no getting together and having children or getting married or even living with a woman today, because there's just no healthy way to do that, regardless of whether particular women are like that or would have something to offer in a society where there was actually a social contract between men and women again. We don't have that social contract anymore, and men have to do things on their own terms, regardless of the quality of women that they're interacting with.